My boyfriend said, "I'm not letting go of my ex. Deal with it." I said calmly, "Okay." He smiled. "I knew you'd understand." I looked at him and said, "I'll go solo from here." His face changed instantly. "What does that mean?" I held his gaze and answered, "It means you keep your ex. I keep my dignity. Goodbye." My name is Elena Hart. I'm 29 years old, and until recently, I thought I had a clear understanding of what a healthy relationship was supposed to feel like. I wasn't reckless with my heart. I liked certainty, routine, and people who meant what they said. My life had always been simple in the best way. Work, a few close friends, familiar places, familiar habits, and the kind of quiet that feels earned rather than empty. So when I met Caleb, I didn't question much at first. That was probably the most dangerous part. Nothing about the beginning felt suspicious. It felt easy, natural. He wasn't overly polished or performative. He felt warm, present, and attentive in a way that made me feel seen. For almost a year, our relationship moved in a rhythm that seemed healthy from the outside and peaceful from the inside. We built something quiet: weekend dinners, late-night conversations, shared grocery runs, little routines that made a person feel woven into your days. And because it felt calm, I mistook it for security. Looking back, that was my first mistake. Sometimes things feel easy, not because everything is right, but because the wrong things haven't been forced into the light yet. They're still there, waiting. The first time his ex-girlfriend came up, it barely registered. He mentioned her casually, the way people mention places they used to live or restaurants they used to like. He would say things like, "Maya used to love that place," or "I've been there before with her," and then move on. I didn't make anything of it. Everyone has a past. I wasn't looking for reasons to feel threatened by a woman who was supposedly behind him. If anything, I told myself honesty was a good sign. But then her name kept appearing. Not in one dramatic, undeniable way. That would have been easier. It happened through repetition, small enough to dismiss, frequent enough to remember. His phone would light up, and something in his expression would shift before he turned it face down. He would step away to answer certain calls, not with obvious secrecy, but with just enough distance to make the room feel different. Sometimes I would walk in and feel a conversation had ended a second too early. None of it was enough to turn into an accusation, but it was enough to become a pattern. At first, I did what a lot of people do when they want a relationship to work. I gave him grace. I gave him space. I gave him the benefit of explanations he never actually offered. I told myself I was being mature. The truth was simpler than that. I was noticing things. I just didn't want my noticing to change anything. Because once you ask the question out loud, once you force a vague discomfort into actual language, you also force yourself to deal with whatever answer comes back. And some part of me already knew I might not like it. Still, there comes a point where silence stops feeling patient and starts feeling dishonest. One night, we were sitting in his apartment with the television humming in the background. I don't remember what was playing. I only remember the feeling that had been building in me for weeks, finally becoming too solid to ignore. I kept my voice even when I asked, "Are you still in contact with her?" He looked at me and answered immediately, "Yeah." That was it. No pause, no caution, no attempt to explain before I had to ask for one. Just a clean, easy yes, like it was the least complicated thing in the world. That answer unsettled me more than defensiveness would have. "How often?" I asked. He shrugged lightly. "Sometimes." Sometimes. People use that word when they want the edges to stay blurry. Not often enough to sound bad. Not rarely enough to sound reassuring. Just somewhere in the middle, where accountability goes soft. "It's not a big deal," he added. That phrase stayed with me, not because it answered anything, but because it didn't. "It's not a big deal," is what people say when they want something left undefined. So I nodded, not because I felt better, because I wasn't ready yet. Over the next few weeks, I paid closer attention. Not in a paranoid way. I wasn't checking his phone or chasing proof. I was just watching what was already in front of me now that I had stopped pretending I couldn't see it. The pattern sharpened. He smiled at messages more often, replied faster, sometimes even while I was talking. He would step out to take calls that sounded too brief to matter and yet happened too often to dismiss. And every time I circled back to it, every time I gave him another chance to offer clarity without being cornered, his answer stayed basically the same. "It's nothing. You're reading into it. She's just part of my life." None of those responses were loud. That was what made them dangerous. There was never enough heat to justify a fight, just enough dismissal to make me question whether I was being unreasonable for feeling unsettled. No betrayal had happened in front of me. No confession had been made. There was no dramatic scene I could point at and say, "There, that's the problem." But something was wrong, and the worst part was that he seemed completely comfortable with that wrongness. The conversation that changed everything didn't happen during an argument. It happened in stillness, which somehow made it hit harder. We were sitting together, not doing anything important, just sharing space the way couples do when they think they're safe with each other. The room was quiet. His body language was relaxed. Mine probably looked the same from the outside. But inside, something had already settled. I wasn't confused anymore. I had just been postponing the moment when I said it plainly enough that neither of us could hide from it. So I looked at him and said, "You're still talking to her." He met my eyes without flinching. "Yeah." This time I didn't let it pass. "Why?" There was a pause then, not long. Just long enough for me to see that he was choosing words, not searching for truth. Then he said it. "Because I'm not letting go of her." The sentence didn't sound ashamed or defensive. That was what made it so unsettling. Caleb said it the way someone states a personal preference. Simple, settled, already decided. For a second, I just stared at him. Part of me still expected him to soften it somehow, to add a hesitation or a crack that would make it sound human. But he didn't. "What does that mean?" I asked. He leaned back slightly, completely at ease. "It means she's still part of my life, and I'm not cutting her off just because I'm in a relationship." His tone was calm, almost reasonable. That made it worse. There was no chaos to react to, no raised voice, just a man sitting across from me, asking me to make peace with the fact that he wanted to keep one foot in his past while standing in my present. "And you expect me to be okay with that?" I asked. "Yes," he said. Then he added, "Because it's not like that." That phrase again. Another vague sentence meant to blur what was actually happening. But this time I heard it differently. He wanted both things, the relationship with me and the emotional thread that kept him connected to her. He wanted comfort without sacrifice, and he honestly believed I would adjust. I nodded once. "Okay." The second that word left my mouth, he smiled. A small, relieved smile. "I knew you'd understand," he said. That smile told me everything I needed to know. He thought the conversation was over. He thought my calm meant acceptance. He thought I was doing what I had done every other time something felt off, absorbing the discomfort and making myself flexible enough to fit whatever version of love he was offering. But something had already changed inside me. I sat there for a few seconds, quiet, letting the moment settle. The strange thing about clarity is that it doesn't always arrive with anger. Sometimes it arrives with stillness. Sometimes you don't feel shattered. You feel steady. Then I said very evenly, "I'll go solo from here." His smile disappeared. "What?" I held his gaze. "I'll go solo from here." He frowned, trying to catch up. "What does that mean?" I looked at him without wavering. "It means you keep your ex." I let that sit for a beat. "And I keep my dignity." The room changed after that. Nothing moved physically. The television was still humming in the background. The same lamp was on. The same couch. The same night. But between us, everything stopped. For the first time since the conversation began, Caleb had no immediate response. Just silence. I stood up. Not fast, not dramatically. I didn't need the performance of anger because what I felt was cleaner than that. I was done. "Goodbye," I said. For a second, he just sat there like the word hadn't fully reached him. Then his body caught up to reality. "Wait, what?" he said, getting to his feet. "Elena, what?" I didn't answer right away. Some questions don't need answers, because the answer is already standing in front of the person asking them. "You're breaking up with me," he said. This time it wasn't a question. It was disbelief trying to wear the shape of one. I looked at him, and in that moment, I watched the realization hit him in pieces. He had expected discomfort. He had expected pushback, maybe even tears, but he had never expected consequence. I picked up my bag from the chair beside me. "Elena, stop," he said. He ran a hand over his face. "Elena, stop. Don't do this like that." That line might have worked on me earlier, back when I still thought the problem was something we had to solve together, instead of something he had already chosen for both of us. "I'm not doing anything like that," I said. "I'm leaving." "You're overreacting." There it was. Predictable. When someone can't control your standards, they try to control the story. I looked at him, calm enough to make him even more uncomfortable. "I'm not overreacting," I said. "I'm just not ignoring it anymore." "That's not fair," he said quickly. "You're acting like I did something wrong." I let the silence stretch for a second before answering. "It's not just the contact," I said. "It's what it means." He frowned harder. "What does that even mean?" "It means you made a choice," I said. and now I'm making mine. He stared at me, trying to find a version where this was still negotiable. You're seriously going to throw this away over my past? He asked. I almost laughed. This isn't your past, I said. It's your present. That landed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly. He looked away for a second, then back at me. You're twisting it. No, I replied. I'm just not adjusting to it. There was a difference, and now he finally understood it. I reached for my keys and jacket. My hands were steady. I noticed that. Maybe because part of me had expected to feel devastated. But there was only sadness, and under that sadness, an even deeper sense of relief. Because the confusion was over. He stepped toward me as I moved to the door. Elena, just wait. I put my hand on the handle but didn't open it yet. We can talk about this properly, he said. I turned my head slightly and looked at him over my shoulder. We just did. No, we didn't, he said quickly. You didn't even try to understand. That was the line that almost would have hurt if I hadn't already crossed the point where his version of things still had power over me. I faced him fully one last time. I understood perfectly, I said. That's the problem. He went silent. And in that silence, I saw the truth more clearly than ever. He had never prepared for my clarity. He had only prepared for my accommodation. So I opened the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't cry in front of him. I didn't give him a dramatic ending he could replay later and use to make himself feel like the calmer person in the room. I just left. The hallway outside felt colder than I expected. Not because the building was cold, but because reality had changed temperature. My chest felt tight, but not from regret. From finality. Behind me, I heard the door open again. Elena! I stopped for half a second, but didn't turn around. His footsteps came closer, then stopped. Are you really doing this? He asked. I kept my eyes forward. Yes. There was a pause. Then, quieter this time, almost stunned, You're actually ending this. Yes. And then I walked away. Not because I wasn't hurt. Because I finally respected myself more than I feared losing him. The first thing I noticed after I left wasn't the silence. It was the absence of confusion. I had expected the usual aftermath, the second guessing, the urge to replay every word, the quiet panic that maybe I had gone too far, too fast. But that didn't come. What came instead was something steadier, quieter, almost unsettling in its clarity. I got home, put my keys down, and just stood there for a moment in my apartment. Nothing had changed physically. Same furniture, same space, same life. But something inside me had shifted into place in a way I hadn't felt before. For the first time in months, my thoughts weren't arguing with each other. There was no maybe, no what if. No, you should have said this instead. Just one simple understanding. I had made the right decision. That didn't mean it didn't hurt. It did, just not in the chaotic way I expected. It was a clean kind of pain, the kind that comes from seeing something clearly instead of trying to reshape it into something you can live with. My phone buzzed later that evening. His name. I looked at it for a few seconds, then flipped the phone over and let it ring out. A minute later, it buzzed again, then again. By the fourth call, it stopped. And then the messages started. Caleb, can we talk? Caleb, you're being unfair. Caleb, this isn't how relationships work. I read them without opening the thread fully, just enough to see the pattern forming. He wasn't asking what went wrong. He was telling me I had handled it wrong. That difference mattered more than anything he was actually saying. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to explain. The next morning, there were more messages. The tone had changed. Caleb, I didn't mean it like that. Caleb, you know I care about you. Caleb, don't throw this away. I stared at the screen a little longer this time, not because I was tempted to answer, but because I could see exactly what was happening. The situation wasn't going the way he expected anymore, and now he was adjusting. But not because he had suddenly understood, because he was losing control of the outcome. By the third day, the messages shifted again. Shorter, sharper. Caleb, so that's it? Caleb, no discussion? Caleb, you're not even trying? That last one made me pause for a second, not because it made me question myself, but because it revealed something important. He still believed this was my responsibility to fix. That somehow, I was the one walking away from something that could have been saved, instead of the one refusing to stay in something that had already been compromised. I put my phone down, and didn't pick it up again. That afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. For a second, I thought about ignoring it, pretending I wasn't home, letting whatever it was pass without becoming part of my day. But something told me I already knew who it was. I walked over and opened the door. Caleb stood there, and for the first time since I had met him, he didn't look certain. There was no calm confidence, no easy composure, no quiet assumption that things would go his way if he just stayed patient enough. He looked unsettled. Not broken, but shaken in a way I hadn't seen before. Can we talk? He asked. His voice was different too, lower, less controlled. I stepped aside and let him in, not because I wanted to fix anything, because I wanted to finish it. He walked in slowly, his eyes moving around my apartment like he was seeing it differently now. Or maybe like he was realizing this space no longer included him the way it used to. He stopped near the center of the room. "You're really serious," he said. I closed the door behind him. "Yes." He let out a breath, running his hand through his hair. "You're actually ending this?" "Yes." There was a short silence. Then he shook his head slightly. "Over something like this." That phrase again. Small, reducing, trying to shrink the moment into something manageable. I looked at him calmly. "Not over this, because of this." He frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "It does," I replied. "You just don't like what it means." He stared at me for a few seconds, searching for an opening, a crack, a sign that this could still be turned around if he said the right thing. But there wasn't one, because this wasn't about saying the right thing anymore. It was about what had already been said and believed. The silence between us didn't feel awkward. It felt finished. Caleb shifted his weight slightly, like he was trying to find the version of himself that used to work in situations like this. "You're making this bigger than it is," he said. "I'm not making it bigger," I said. "I'm just not making it smaller for your comfort." That landed harder than he expected. "It's just a conversation," he insisted. "You're acting like I chose her over you." I held his gaze. "You did." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. He exhaled sharply, frustrated now. "That's not what happened." "Then explain it," I said. There was a pause, not the kind where someone is thinking carefully, the kind where someone is trying to reshape something that already exists into something more acceptable. "I told you," he said finally. "She's part of my life. That doesn't mean anything between us changes." "That's exactly what it means," I replied. He shook his head, stepping closer. "No, it doesn't. You're turning this into something it's not. And you're pretending it's something it isn't." The tension in the room sharpened. There was no confusion left to argue over, just two different versions of reality. "You're seriously going to walk away from everything we built over something like this?" he said. I didn't answer right away because the way he framed it mattered. Everything we built, as if that foundation didn't require boundaries to hold it up. "I'm walking away," I said slowly, "because what we built isn't what I thought it was." That stopped him. Then he tried again, softer this time. "I didn't think it mattered this much to you." That one almost sounded real. Almost. I looked at him for a moment. "You didn't ask." Another pause. Because that was the truth he couldn't avoid. He hadn't asked. He had assumed. "I thought you trusted me," he said. "I did," I replied. The simplicity of that answer seemed to unsettle him more than anything else I had said. "Then why does this change everything?" "Because trust isn't just about believing you," I said. "It's about what you choose to protect." He frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means if you wanted this relationship to feel secure, you wouldn't leave space for something that threatens it." "That's not a threat," he said quickly. "To you," I answered. That was the problem. Not that he didn't understand, that he didn't need to, because it wasn't costing him anything. Until now. He looked away again, running both hands through his hair this time. "You're making me choose," he said. I shook my head. "No, you already did." Silence, heavy this time. "And you're just done?" he asked. "Yes." He stared at me like he was waiting for something else, a condition, a hesitation, a sign that done didn't actually mean done. But I didn't give him one, because there wasn't one. "You're not even willing to try to fix this?" he asked. "There's nothing to fix," I said. "You told me exactly what you want, and I'm not part of that." That was it. That was the line that ended everything. Not loudly, not dramatically, just clean, final. He let out a slow breath, looking down for a moment. When he looked back up, something in his expression had shifted. Not fully, but enough. He was starting to understand that this wasn't something he could talk his way out of. "I can change it," he said. The words came out quickly, too quickly. "I can stop talking to her." There it was, the thing he refused to consider before, offered now like it was enough to undo everything. I watched him for a second, and for the first time since he walked in, I felt something close to sadness again. Not because I believed him, because I understood what it meant. "You already told me what you wanted," I said quietly. "That was before—" "No," I cut in gently. "That was honest." He froze. "But this is me trying," he said. "I know, and that's supposed to count for something." "It does." Hope flickered across his face, small and misplaced. "It just doesn't change anything." And just like that, it was gone. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Caleb stood there like he had run out of options he believed would work. "You're serious," he said again. It wasn't disbelief this time. It was confirmation. "Yes." He let out a slow breath, nodding once like he was trying to steady himself. "I said I'd change it. I said I'd stop talking to her. That's what you wanted, right? There it was again. The assumption that this had always been about control, about negotiating until the outcome looked acceptable on both sides. I looked at him steadily. No, I said. That's what I needed you to already understand. He frowned. That's the same thing. It's not. The difference sat between us, sharp and clear. If you have to be asked to protect the relationship, I continued, then you're not protecting it. You're responding to pressure. He didn't answer right away. I didn't think it was that serious, he said finally. And there it was. The truth. Not dramatic, not cruel, just honest in the worst way. I know, I said. That answer seemed to hit him harder than anything else because there was no anger in it, no accusation, just recognition. You could have told me, he added quickly. You could have said something earlier. I did, I said. You just didn't hear it. He opened his mouth like he was about to argue, then stopped. Because somewhere in his memory, those conversations existed. I thought it wasn't a big deal, he said again, softer now. That's the problem. Another silence. This one didn't feel tense anymore. It felt like something settling into place. He looked around my apartment again, slower this time, taking in the space, the distance, the fact that nothing here belonged to him anymore. So that's it? He asked. Yes. He nodded slowly, not agreeing, just accepting that this was the version of reality he had now. You really won't reconsider? No. He held my gaze for a few seconds, long enough for me to see the shift happen. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't sudden, it was quiet. Like something inside him finally let go of the idea that this could still be undone. Okay, he said. That word sounded different coming from him. Not confident, not relieved, just empty. He walked toward the door, not rushed, not slow, just steady. When he reached it, he paused for a second, his hand resting lightly on the handle. I thought he might turn back. Say something else. Try one more time. But he didn't. He opened the door, stepped out, and this time he didn't stop. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and just like that, it was over. Not in the dramatic way people imagine. No shouting, no tears, no last words that echo for years. Just a quiet ending that left no confusion behind. I stood there for a few seconds after he left, not moving, not thinking, just feeling the space shift. Then I walked over and locked the door. Not because I was afraid he would come back, but because something inside me needed that final action. A boundary. Clear. Physical. Done. 3 months later, nothing looks dramatic from the outside. There's no big transformation story, no sudden glow-up, no moment where everything in my life flipped into something unrecognizable. It's quieter than that, but it's also clearer than anything I've ever felt before. Mornings feel lighter, not because something exciting is waiting for me, but because nothing is sitting in the background asking to be ignored. There's no tension I have to explain away. No behavior I have to reinterpret just to keep the peace. No small discomforts stacking up until they quietly become something I can't name anymore. Life didn't become better in a loud way. It became simpler. And that simplicity feels like breathing properly again after you didn't even realize you were holding your breath. I still think about Caleb sometimes. Not with longing, not with confusion, just with understanding. Understanding that he wasn't trying to hurt me. He just didn't think what he was doing would cost him anything. That's the part people don't always say out loud. Most situations like this don't come from someone choosing to be cruel. They come from someone believing they can have everything without giving anything up. And for a while, that belief works, until it doesn't. I heard through mutual friends that he tried to reach out again, not directly. That part mattered, because it told me something. He still wasn't approaching it with full clarity, still hoping the situation could shift without him having to fully face what had happened. The same pattern. Just from a distance this time. Apparently, he asked about me, tried to see how I was doing, if I had moved on, if I was open to talking again. The answers didn't matter, because by then, I was already somewhere he couldn't reach anymore. Not physically, emotionally. And that's a difference people underestimate. Once you walk away with clarity, you don't come back with confusion. There's nothing pulling you backward, nothing unresolved enough to reopen. That door doesn't stay half open. It closes, completely, and it stays that way. I didn't hate him. That might be the part people expect, but hate requires energy, and I wasn't carrying anything heavy anymore. If anything, I felt grateful for the moment things became clear, because without that moment, I might have stayed. I might have kept adjusting, kept shrinking my expectations to fit something that was never going to meet them. And that would have cost me far more than the relationship ever could. The truth is simple. If someone asks you to accept something that chips away at your self-respect, they're not asking for understanding. They're asking for permission. Permission to keep things exactly the way they want them. permission to avoid making a real choice, permission to stay comfortable while you quietly carry the weight of it. And the moment you stop giving that permission, everything changes. Not always for them, but for you.